Hey guys, back with another Gilman video. This time we're zooming in from her view of collective life into what she calls, sorry, this is like I love Charlotte Perkins Gilman, but sexuo-economic relation is a difficult thing for me to say. Kind of maybe the clunkiest term that we've gotten so far. Basically, what you want to think about it, I'm going to give you a definition, but what you want to think about it is how work gets corrupted by gender. The definition of this is, and it's very simple, a condition, and I'm going to give you the whole thing as she wrote it, a condition existing only among human beings in which one sex, the female, is economically dependent on the other sex, the male. That's it. I mean, super, super simple idea, but she's going to have some pretty fantastic effects out of it. So basically, it's the idea that that the female is economically dependent on the male, and it's relatively unique in the animal kingdom. Okay, so the main negative effect is that it corrupts sociality. That if you have women dependent economically on men, that sociality being the capacity to realize oneself and joy and experience joy by working together, that's been corrupted. She obviously is going to be concerned about women, but she's going to suggest that men are corrupted by this too. That's the general negative effect. In fact, it doesn't count in those four. That sort of is. There are four. These are going to be four specifics from that one general corruption. Okay, first two that I encountered when researching her are effects on men. So I don't know if that is how she wrote it. I mean, she's obviously a feminist, so women are going to be focal, the negative experience. But she has several ways, a couple of ways at least, in which men suffer as well. The first way is she says that it compels men to put the public good second to the private good. And if you think about this, it kind of makes some sense. If a man is completely, if a woman is completely dependent on a man, the man is going to feel some responsibility, at least theoretically, to take care of her and then also to take care of the kids. And what that means is decision making is going to be about the family first, the common good second. And she suggests in a situation where sociality is working the way it is supposed to work, there wouldn't need to be that distinction. Every person is economically independent, then therefore we can look after the common good rather than thinking I have to worry about this person who is completely dependent on me alone. So that is effect number one for men. It compels them to put the public second to the private good. The second effect that it has on men is, she says, so if you think about what's happening, it's not just that she's dependent, but she also sort of organizes everything around him because her life depends on him. And she says that this is going to turn him into, she calls him a petty tyrant. Because he has a person whose entire life is service to him. Probably most of you didn't grow up in a household where that was the case, but for me growing up, until my mom got a job, so I'm growing up in the 70s and 80s, so my mom ends up in the workforce, but she doesn't start out there. She doesn't go into the workforce until I'm probably 16, 17, maybe even a little bit later. And the way our life was organized was my dad went out and earned money, and my mom stayed home and worked. And first of all, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't want to suggest that there's something wrong with that. I don't even think Charlotte Perkins Gilman would suggest there's something inherently wrong in it. It corrupts, but it doesn't necessarily corrupt. If people are fulfilled in those roles and their relationship can still be egalitarian, I'm not sure she'd have a problem with it. But I can tell you that in my parents' house, you know, I mean, my dad wasn't like trying to be a horrible person or anything. He wasn't a horrible person, but he very clearly was sort of the central focus of the family, and everything revolved around his desires. And if he wanted something to happen, my mom would make it happen. And so I can kind of see that example of a petty tyrant, that it turns men into that. Okay, those are the first two effects of corrupting sociality. Third effect is, and now we get to women, and the first of the effects for women is somewhat obvious. Women are denied the basic activity that gives human beings economic independence and a means of expressing themselves. It's like it's the one that I would have thought would have been first, but it's not the first one I encountered. So that one I think is pretty obvious. The second one is not obvious, but I mean it is, I guess, a little bit less so. She says that that women, because they are socialized to suppress and distort this sort of creativity in them, what they focus on is they focus their energy on obtaining a mate, which also kind of makes some sense. And I would suggest, not that the women who are watching this video would necessarily feel that way, but I would suggest that there is still residual cultural expressions in our society today that encourage girls and women to think in terms of, I need to get a guy. I think we still have cultural products from Hollywood. We still have music that is oriented around that idea of fulfillment coming from love. And I mean, love's good, but Charlotte Perkins Gilman would say it's not everything. It's like you still have this other part of you. And she says, though, that when you corrupt sociality, women don't get to express that, and they channel all their energy into love, and she calls it obtaining a male mate. And she says that, and this is kind of where I feel like the holdovers, the residual beliefs are still existing in our culture. There's a ton of pressure on women, I'm not telling you something you don't know, to look the right way. The right way changes, obviously, over time, but there is a principle of sexual attraction that women still are supposed to conform to, and Charlotte Perkins Gilman is talking about that as being part of that fourth negative effect. You corrupt sociality, women get focused on obtaining a mate, and their appearance, secondary sexual characteristics, become that much more important, and she's encouraged to think about them with that much more importance. Okay, that's it for that's fundamentally how she feels gender corrupts work, and the term she uses is that sexuo-economic relation. So zooming out from this and going back to her first principles of biology. First, there's biological sexual attraction. That's just natural. Then on top of that are excessive sex distinctions. Gender gets built on top of that. Then based on gender, we end up with this corruption of sociality, the sexuo-economic relation. And that leads to all those negative effects. She would say that in a very basic way, what we are doing is, hold on, because I skipped over it before, a very basic way, what we are doing is we're assigning individuals to work not based on their ability, but based on sex. And that in doing that, in that most basic way, we end up leading to all of these other negative outcomes. Okay, and now we're in transition to the next video, and we're going to do it in under 10 minutes. All this is about gender's effect on the sphere of society she calls work. In the next video, we're going to take that her idea of common consciousness and see how that is affected by the primacy of gender. So I will see you in that video.